from the News Channel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to OpenLine. Thank you for joining us on this Monday night. I always appreciate you being here with us. Don't forget, this is your chance to chime in on our conversation today and really be part of this. I want to call it a round table. The number will be on the bottom of the screen here in just a few minutes. Let me introduce you to our guest and our topic tonight. Our guest is Jace Wilder, back with us tonight, though in person. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I love being here and being here in the studio with you guys. It's great to be back in person.
It's different than Zoom. It is better. And we're talking about your work with the Tennessee Equality Project. You're the education manager, also a full-time student, working very hard right now, and we'll get into that on the personal side. But we are talking about issues surrounding the LGBTQ community with the upcoming midterm elections. And I also want to talk about our own legislative session that will be coming up in January for our own General Assembly. So we have a lot of ground to cover tonight. First of all, tell us about the Tennessee Equality Project.
Yeah, so the Tennessee Equality Project was founded back in the 90s, and it mainly focused on same-sex marriage, but obviously since then has expanded to a lot more work, such as ensuring that same-sex couples get the same access to health care, that trans people are supported, and have education sessions for those that consider themselves allies, or for people that are just willing to learn about what it is to be trans, what it is to be LGBT, and some of the niche topics within that, such as transgender health care, advocacy, and so on. So we mainly work on educating the state and bringing them up to their house, back up to the legislative plaza.
Okay. You have been in this work for a while now. You're also a student pursuing a degree in kind of this realm that will allow you to continue this effort. Just tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I grew up in Cheatham County, so I was born and raised here, one of the few left. So I was born and raised here. I lived in Cheatham until I was 16 years old, and then I moved to Davidson County and went to Hillwood. Then I went to Belmont for my undergrad degree, where I pursued political science and public health. That's actually where I first kind of got introduced to this work and got introduced to some of the people in the community, really found my home in Nashville. So I ended up staying here, and now I'm pursuing my master's of public health to continue with learning about health policy and how I can help people in my community.
What is public health? Explain that for someone who says, I've never heard of this degree. What do you do with that?
Yeah, so public health focuses quite literally on the health of the public. How can we actually help the entire population? It's both kind of an art and a science, to get kind of fancy. The art being how we craft these things, how do we take into account all the social aspects of the public and how they exist outside of like these ideas of individual health that we have. Like, you know, we think of health as we go to our doctor's office, stuff like that. But public health reimagines that and really sees that health starts at home. It starts in your environment. Do you have access to good food? Do you have access to places that you can safely walk? Do you have access to a safe workspace? Stuff like that. So public health really is just ensuring quality of life for everybody.
And this is a little off topic here, but maybe it'll help people imagine what this conversation is around, is that during COVID, public health and our physical health really collided in a very public, spotlighted way of how can we make these two things work together and the best needs of people are met.
Yes.
Pretty fair?
Absolutely. And, you know, the continued project is to make sure that everybody's included in that, that we're not missing anybody, and that we're also not perpetrating anything, and that we're not stepping over anything with people's access to what they want to consider their health.
Now, you said my community. I want to continue this for my community. Obviously, you do and have been doing work for the Tennessee Equality Project. So you're bringing in all of this education into a group that really works for equality.
Right. Right. And so when I speak about my community, I speak very heavily for the LGBTQ community and the trans community. But I also realize that I myself don't represent fully that. You know, I am a person within it, and that's where I really try and stay and reimagine my future in that kind of angle of realizing that I can't speak for everybody, but I can bring in narratives and invite them to the table. And the best way to do that is to make sure that we all are on the same playing field and that we all are welcome to the table. And that does start with somebody kind of helping building that path.
Some of the topics we'll discuss tonight, some of the topics that you will see in the news or on programs or really anywhere you can turn on the television or the radio or pop up the internet. Some of these topics are controversial and we're not going to shy away from them. That's why we have our phone lines open, 615-737+. But with every open line, we just hope that you can be part of the conversation, and it can be a conversation and it's about education. I know that's important to you.
Yes, and I really do want to educate as many people as possible, because I do think that when we shy away from some of the conversations, that's when we start really splitting into our camps, and that's when we really start going down into what we believe without really knowing why sometimes. Sometimes it's just because we haven't had access to that education, we haven't had access to those conversations, so we kind of get scared. And so I really like opening those doors and opening that conversation line to ensure that nobody is missing out, or if they're sitting on the fence about an issue, that they know that there's somebody that they can still talk to that is completely open about it.
Now we frame this conversation around the midterm elections and also our legislative session that will start in January. When I say midterm elections, from the Tennessee Equality Project point of view, what are you focusing on ahead of November?
The first thing that we are focusing on is honestly getting people out to vote. That is the big thing, is ensuring that that your vote's not wasted, that it's not just you're doing this activity and it's just going to be all lost cause because my voice isn't heard. That's what we hear a lot. So we're really focusing on making sure that people understand what their rights are, basically what is on the ballot right now, what is up. We know that there's an amendment about taking all slavery out of the Constitution. That needs everybody's voice on it, and also supporting LGBT candidates. So supporting those such as Jace Wilder, who's in Goodlettsville running for the commissioner there, or Kate Craig, who is running for Senator Rusty Crowe's seat as well, making sure that people also know that there are people out there that if they want to, they can choose to represent them that maybe they weren't aware of were there before. And so our main focus is, again, bringing people out to vote, making sure they know who is on the ballot, what they're about, and also what else is on the ballot, the constitutional amendments, and what's coming up in the session that they need to be voting for, which is those people that will represent who they are and what they want out of Tennessee. So
not specifically and only LGBTQ issues. It really is a community life issue that the issues that you're trying to get across.
Yes, exactly. And we really want to emphasize that there is no strict one party answer to this either. That voting is part of the process, but we want to also encourage people to get active and to really participate so that the representation does represent who they are, because they don't know if they don't hear from all the people in the community as well.
Has that been a huge hurdle in your community to get past?
For some time it has been, because I feel as though a lot of people, and rightfully so, have kind of lost hope at times. That they hear some of the messages from the Capitol and they hear or see some of the things in the news and they just kind of make an assumption that this state's never going to represent them. And we see, unfortunately, a lot of people moving away from the state, trying to leave and trying to find somewhere that they feel more secure in, which there's not a wrong or right way to deal with politics, but we also understand that the more people that leave, the less hope that we get to see. Because one of the things that I was very encouraged by was when I was at Belmont and I saw people like Joe Woolley or Chris Sanders, who I work with now, it was fantastic to see that those people who had already been through all this other struggle were still in the fight as well. And that meant that there could be a hopeful future for me. And for us to get to where we want to be, we have to make sure that our voices are heard. And that doesn't happen if we're kind of filing ourselves back. You know, we already feel disempowered. We don't need to disempower ourselves.
As you well know, as any, I just think of the civil rights movement, change comes so slowly, right? Yes. It just is a drumbeat of just slow, slow, slow.
Yes.
It can be hard to keep up that perseverance, to just keep pushing forward.
Yes.
How do you combat that?
So I think one of the biggest things is honestly coming back to who's the people that you want at your table, who's the people that you want to see next to you, and trying to always keep that image in mind. Already have people that support you. Finding that is probably the most important thing, but also sometimes the hardest, especially when we look at our rural areas where people aren't able to see that support. But we also live in a really amazing age of digital technology and connection, and so being able to rely back on that and realizing that you don't have to learn all this on your own, that there are people that do want to help you learn how to advocate for yourself, and that there is no skill or job that you need to previously have, right? There's no job you have to have in order to be represented in your state. That's the job of the representatives. Your job is just to tell them what the issues are that you need to have talked about. So if they don't know that you exist in the state and that you as a trans person, as a lesbian, as a gay person, as a Latinx or anyone else, if they don't know what issues you're facing because they're only hearing from this one other group that takes advantage of that advocacy and takes advantage of those conversations, then they're not going to know that you're there. And so it's really, really important to keep those people close that do support you and are willing to empower you, but to also imagine who else should be at the table next to you and really letting that drive you, of continuing the invitations until the table is full.
Speaking of the table, let's invite someone to the table right now. We have Molly, I think I heard that correctly, on the line. Molly, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Larry, go ahead.
Hi. Well, I was going to ask, hi, Jace, how are you?
Good.
When I need medical care, I go to see a medical professional, my physician. I don't know, I don't call an auto mechanic or a plumber or whatever. And so my question was, what type of laws or policies can be put into place to help the transgender population get proper health care?
Good question, and certainly timely in our area. Thank you, Molly, for calling in.
Yes.
We appreciate hearing. I'm going to hang up so you can listen to your TV. It just makes it easier that way. All right, let's just jump right on into this because it is timely.
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. One of the big things that I like to re-emphasize is that one of the things that we need to focus on is expansion of healthcare access for everybody in order for any group to be helped, right? So we can target certain groups, and we can say that a certain group has more health disparities or that they need certain types of access. But overall in Tennessee, we're seeing large struggles in rural communities not having any kind of hospital access for miles on end. We're seeing that doctors are very spare in these communities, and that it can overall cause major issues that if they were solved early enough, if they were taken on early enough, we wouldn't see, right? And so we need to expand that healthcare access for everybody.
Right.
As far as the trans community, right now it's more about focusing on who should not be in the conversation or what should not be in the conversation. When we talk about healthcare and the healthcare needs of ourselves, we don't very often go to the Tennessee legislator and ask them what they think we should do. We don't ask them if we should get this vaccine or this surgery because there are representatives. So the same applies for trans folks, especially with the fact that we do have standards of care that are in place, that there are limited, but there are quite a few facilities within the state and throughout the country that do provide specialized care because those are specialized doctors. And if anything, we need to expand more of that access because, again, we can't know or solve the issues or address them if nobody has access to any of it. It doesn't get rid of the issue, it just hides it away. So overall, it would be expansion of all care, but also expansion of funding into the science of trans healthcare, if that's something that we're concerned about. And honestly, just trying to take government out of it. We advocate a lot about, big government, and that's a big conversation in Tennessee about keeping it small. Well, let's keep it small, and let's take the government out of our hospitals in that regard.
So as Molly was saying, she was saying, what kind of laws do we need? Perhaps more of it's a hands-off sort of thing. It's not, we need laws, you're saying we don't need it.
Right. As far as transgender healthcare, we need less laws that are trapping trans people in or making it impossible for them to get the correct and valuable healthcare, because we also want to make sure that the healthcare that they are receiving is actually of quality, actually of value, right? And we know that many of the facilities in Tennessee do provide for that, but again, we want to continue to see that grow, and that's not just for the trans population, but for everybody. We want to see quality of care grow out throughout the entire state, and we're putting more people in danger by limiting what doctors learn or don't learn about trans healthcare. I know that the Kansas Journal of Medicine had actually reported that over 50% of trans people have to educate their doctors on their own health care, and that over 33% actually avoid going to healthcare professionals at all because they feel scared. And so what we need, if there is a policy that would be put in place, is to provide education and provide further funding for education of all healthcare providers to ensure that trans people have a safe place to go. They don't have to particularly provide every single thing and specialize in trans healthcare, but they should be knowledgeable of their trans patients.
We're going to take a quick break again. You are invited to this conversation today. 615-737+ is the number to call. We'll come back right after this.